Never say never. It's the simple rule of geopolitics. Always keep your options open. Our next story is the perfect example of that, and it starts with a picture. A picture clicked in Kabul yesterday, on Thursday. You can see two men holding official bilateral talks. One is the Taliban's foreign minister. His name is Amir Khan Muttaqi. And the other, a senior Indian diplomat. His name is J.P. Singh, a joint secretary at India's External Affairs Ministry. Now, we'll discuss what they talked about, but first, let this picture sink in. A top Indian official engaging with the Taliban's foreign minister. Not sure anyone had this on their bingo card. Now, don't mistake this for recognition. India has not recognized the Taliban regime in Kabul. This is more about engagement. They're reacting to the new strategic reality. But India wants to keep things low-key. Their official statement confirms that. Most of the focus is on the humanitarian assistance. It makes only a passing reference to a meeting with Afghan authorities. Not foreign minister. They only talked about Afghan authorities. It also doesn't reveal the details of what they discussed. India says its approach will be guided by the historical and civilizational ties between the two countries. In other words, India will not abandon Afghanistan. So the Taliban is shouting from the top of buildings because India, after all, is the world's largest democracy, the success story of the global south. So the Taliban would love any contact with New Delhi. Now we come to the talks. What did India and the Taliban discuss? This is what the Taliban says. Commending IEA's efforts in ensuring overall security and stability, countering narcotics, fighting ISKP, Islamic State of the Khorasan province, and corruption in the country, Mr. J.P. Singh said that India is interested to expand political and economic cooperations with Afghanistan and enhance trade through Chabahar port. Now, two things to note here. One, the Taliban said India has praised its rule, commended its efforts to bring stability and security. And two, India wants to expand cooperation, mainly trade via the Chabahar port. I know these claims may sound a bit dubious, especially India praising the Taliban. But what explains this outreach? Why is India talking to the Taliban at all? For starters, they are the indisputable rulers of Afghanistan. There's no credible opposition left. No scope of foreign intervention in this country, so looks like the Taliban is here to stay, which leaves the world community with limited options. Secondly, India has interest in Afghanistan. New Delhi has invested some $3 billion in this country. It has made dams, schools and roads. India also has a commitment to the Afghan people. It wants to fulfill that commitment. And for that, it needs a local partner. And right now, there is just one option. The Taliban. Even the United States is doing the same. Their biggest goal in Afghanistan is to check terrorism, to keep the Islamic State under control. So the US too is working with the Taliban, not because they like them, but because they are the only option. Plus, the political dynamics have changed. The last Taliban regime was openly hostile towards India, sort of like a terror launch pad. They stirred up trouble in Kashmir, hosted wanted terrorists. They played along when Indian planes were hijacked. The last Taliban regime. The new Taliban regime seems different. I'm not saying they're better, but they're different. For starters, they're not remote controlled from Pakistan. In fact, this regime is at odds with Islamabad. They also know how valuable India is, whether for investments or soft power or political support. So India is a much bigger prize than Pakistan. Hence the change in the Taliban's attitude. Also, if India does not engage, other countries are ready to do that, like China. In January, Beijing recognized the Taliban regime. It was the first country in the world to do so, to officially recognize the Taliban regime. Xi Jinping accepted the credentials of the Taliban's envoy to Beijing. And China's priority is clear. Exploit Afghanistan's resources. We're talking about $1 trillion treasure trove. China wants to exploit it. And if India doesn't engage, the Taliban will seek them out. Afghanistan could become another Chinese ally in the region. They're already close. So New Delhi had to do something. In 2022, it deployed a technical team in Kabul. Again, do not mistake this for recognition because the technical team's main job was to distribute aid. and that still has not changed. But as India steps up engagement, it must be mindful of a few things. Number one, the Taliban's foreign policy may have changed, but their domestic policy has not changed. Afghan girls still cannot go to school. They cannot take up jobs. They cannot participate in sports. As a democracy, India cannot be seen to be condoning that. Number two, it sets the bar very low for legitimacy. Just think about it. The Taliban are a bona fide terror group. What have they done to be courted by the world? Absolutely nothing. All they have done is stayed in power. Is that the new benchmark of legitimacy? Will any terrorist or gang leader be recognized as long as they retain power? So India should be mindful of the narrative, of the optics of such meetings. Because this is one place where India has a lot of leverage. You see, New Delhi has that one thing that the Taliban so desperately want. And that is recognition, not from some dictatorship like China, but from a democratic success story. India's job is to use that leverage wisely to force the Taliban to reform its rule and society. If not, history may not be kind to this outreach.